Hello children, welcome you all once again to my YouTube channel. Today we shall read a new lesson from your NCERT English textbook, An Alien Hand. And the title of the lesson is The Bear Story. Unit number 8, The Bear Story. The lady in the manor house had a bear as pet. It was a most friendly bear who loved vegetables, apples, and honey. He roamed freely during the day but was put on a chain at night. There was once a lady who lived in an old manor house on the border of a big forest. This lady had a pet bear she was very fond of. It had been found in the forest, half dead of hunger, so small and helpless that it had to be brought up on the bottle by the lady and the old cook. This was several years ago, and now it had grown up to a big bear, so big and strong that he could have slain a cow and carried it away between his two paws if he had wanted to. But he did not want to. He was a most amiable bear who did not dream of harming anybody, man or beast. He used to sit outside his kennel and look with his small intelligent eyes most amicably at the cattle grazing in the field nearby. The 3 saggy mountain ponies in the stable knew him well and did not did not mind in the least when he shuffled into the stable with his mistress. The children used to ride on his back and had more than once been found asleep in his kennel between his two paws. The 3 dogs loved to play all sorts of games with him, pull his ears and his stump of a tail. And tease him in every way, but he did not mind it in the least. He had never tasted meat. He ate the same food as the dogs and often out of the same plate: bread, porridge, potato, cabbage, turnip. He had a fine appetite, and his friend, the cook, saw to it that he got his fill. Bears are vegetarians if they have a chance, and fruit is what they like best. In the autumn, he used to sit and look with wistful eyes at the ripening apples in the orchard, and in his young days he had been sometimes unable to resist the temptation to climb the tree and help himself to a handful of them. Bears look clumsy and slow in their movements, but try a bear with an apple, and you will soon find out that he can easily beat any schoolboy at that game. Now he had learned that it was against the law, but he kept his small eyes wide open for any apples that fell to the ground. There had also been some difficulties about the beehives. He had been punished for this by being pulled on the chain for 2 days with a bleeding nose, and he had never done it again. Otherwise he was never put on the chain except for the night, and quite rightly so, for a bear, like a dog, is apt to get somewhat ill-tempered if kept on the chain, and no wonder. The lady visited her sister every Sunday, leaving the bear on the chain the whole afternoon. One Sunday, while walking through the dense forest, she found him following her. She was so angry with the disobedient bear that she hit him on the nose with her umbrella, but the bear was really friendly. He was also put on the chain on Sundays when his mistress went to spend the afternoon with her married sister, who lived in a solitary house on the other side of the mountain lake. A good hour's walk through the dense forest. It was not supposed to be good for him to wander about in the forest with all its temptations. It was better to be on the safe side. He was also a bad sailor and had once taken such a fright at a sudden gust of wind that he had upset the boat, and he and his mistress had to swim to the shore. Now he knew quite well what it meant when his mistress put him on the chain on Sundays, with a friendly tap on his head and the promise of an apple on her return if he had been good during her absence. He was sorry, but resigned like a good dog when his mistress tells him he cannot come with her for a walk. One Sunday, when the lady had chained him up as usual and was about halfway through the forest, he suddenly thought she heard the cracking of a tree branch on the winding footpath behind her. She looked back and was horrified to see the bear coming along full speed. Bears look as if they moved along quite slowly, but they shuffled along much faster than a trotting horse. In a minute he had joined her, panting and sniffing, to take up his usual place, dog fashion, at her heels. The lady was very angry. She was already late for lunch. There was no time to take him back home. She did not want him to come with her, and besides, it was very naughty of him to have disobeyed her. She told him in her severest voice to go back at once, menacing him with her parasol. He stopped a moment and looked at her with his cunning eyes, but did not want to go back and kept on sniffing at her. When the lady saw that he had even lost his new collar, she got still more angry and hit him on the nose with her parasol, so hard that it broke in two. He stopped again, shook his head and opened his big mouth several times as if he wanted to say something. Then he turned round and began to shuffle back the way he had come, stopping now and then to look at the lady till at last she lost sight of him. When the lady came home in the evening, the bear was sitting in his usual place outside his kennel, looking very sorry for himself. The lady was still very angry. She went up to him and began to scold him most severely and said he would have to be chained for 2 more days. The old cook, who loved the bear as if he had been her son, rushed out from the kitchen very angry. "What are you scolding him for, missus?" said the cook. "He has been as good as gold the whole day. Bless him! He has been sitting here quite still on his haunches, as meek as an angel, looking the whole time towards the gate for you to come back." Axel Monte. See, from the title, The Bear Story, we come to know that this is a story related to a bear. So let me explain this. So once there was a lady who lived in an old manor house. The house was situated on the border of a big forest. The lady had a pet bear. He was found in the forest. At that time, he was so small that he was brought up on a bottle by the lady excuse me, and the old cook. Years passed by and he grew up to be a big bear, but he was the most amiable bear and did not harm anybody. He was friendly with the children, the ponies in the stable and the dogs also. The bear was very fond of apples. He used to sit in the orchard and look at the ripening apples. Sometimes he was unable to resist the temptation, so he used to climb the tree and eat a handful of apples. Later, however, he learned that it was wrong. Still, he looked for apples that fell to the ground. Once he tried to disturb the beehives. The bees stung him on the nose. For that, the bear was punished and put in chains for 2 days. He was also chained on Sundays. He was not allowed to accompany his mistress when she went to her sister's house. One Sunday, when the lady went to her sister's house, she chained the bear as usual. When she was about halfway through the forest, she was horrified to see the bear coming towards her at full speed. The lady was very angry. She ordered him to go back at once. The bear didn't want to go back. Rather, he kept on sniffing at her. At last, the lady hit him on the nose with her parasol. The bear then turned around and moved back. The lady came home in the evening. The bear was sitting in his usual place. He looked very sorry for himself. The lady was still very angry and scolded him. The old cook loved the bear dearly. She saw the lady and rushed out of the kitchen angrily. She asked the lady not to scold the bear, as he had been good the whole day and had been sitting at home for the entire day. In fact, the bear whom the lady hit was some other bear. So that's the story. Now let's have check on the exercises. Answer the following questions. 1. Where did the lady find the bear cub? How did she bring it out? The lady found the bear cub in the forest. It was half dead from hunger. It was very small and helpless. It was brought up on bottle by the lady and the old cook. Number 2. The bear grew up, but he was a most amiable bear. Give 3 examples to prove this. Okay. He was an amiable bear, of course. He did not harm anybody, man or beast. He looked most amiably at the cattle grazing in the field nearby, and the children used to ride on his back. Now number 3. What did the bear eat? There were 2 things he was not allowed to do. What were they? The bear ate bread, porridge, potatoes, cabbage, turnips, and fruits. But he was not allowed to do 2 things. First, he was not allowed to climb the apple tree and eat apples. Secondly, he was not allowed to wander in the forest. Now number 4. When was the bear tied up with a chain? Why? The bear was tied up with a chain on Sundays when his mistress went out to meet her sister. He was also chained at night, as he was not allowed to go after her. 5. What happened one Sunday when the lady was going to her sister's house? What did the lady do? What was the bear's reaction? One Sunday, the lady was going to her sister's house. She had chained up the bear as usual. When she was about halfway through the forest, she suddenly heard the cracking of the tree branch. So she looked back. She was horrified to see the bear coming towards her at full speed. In a minute, the bear reached the lady. The lady was very angry. She told him to go back at once. The bear did not want to go back. He kept on sniffing at the lady. The lady got still more angry. She hit him on the nose with her parasol. The bear shook his head. He opened his mouth several times, as if he was wanting to say something. Then he started to go back the way he had come, stopping now and then to look at the lady. And number 6. Why was the bear looking sorry for himself in the evening? Why did the cook get angry with her mistress? The bear looked sorry for himself as he was chained the entire day. The cook loved the bear as if he had been her own son. When she heard the lady scolding the bear, she got very angry with her, as she was scolding the bear without any fault of his. Discuss the following topics in groups. Let's try this. 1. Most people keep dogs and cats as pets. Can you think of some unusual pets that people keep? Okay, we can say some people keep rabbits as pets. Some keep pigs, while others keep monkeys and mongooses. And different varieties of birds like parrots, pigeons, owl, etc. Number 2, the second bear did not attack the lady because he was afraid of her. Do you agree? The question is very subjective. It depends on your understanding of the lesson. One can say yes. He was afraid of her. The lady took the second bear for her pet bear, for sure, and started shouting at him the moment she saw him. She also hit him with her parasol when he sniffed at her. And she didn't have the slightest idea that the bear might be a strange or a wild bear from the forest, and not the pet bear she had at home. See, what did the lady promise the bear while going to her sister's house on Sunday? The bear was promised an apple for being good in her absence. And you say, was the bear obedient? How can you say? Of course, the bear was obedient, as he resigned himself to his mistress' wish. What sort of a bear was he? Of course, he was an amiable bear. And why was the bear hit with parasol by the lady? The bear was hit with parasol because he tried to chase the lady when she was going to meet her sister. She found that the bear was sitting in his usual place outside the kennel, looking very sorry for himself. Even then, the lady didn't believe and didn't have the slightest idea that she had encountered a different bear, a wild bear in the forest. So why did the old cook ask the lady not to scold the bear? You see, the old cook asked the lady not to scold the bear because he had been good in her absence. And he had been sitting in the same place the entire day. See, the bear was an amiable bear. He didn't harm anybody, man or beast. He used to sit outside his kennel. He looked most amiably at the cattle grazing in the field nearby. All the children and the pets, and the ponies in the house loved him. You see, one day the bear and his mistress were sailing in a boat, and there was a sudden gust of wind. The bear was so frightened that he upset the boat. As a result, he and his mistress had to swim to the shore. And that was one funny incident. You see, where did the lady live? How did she come across the bear cub? What sort of a bear it was? The lady lived in an old manor house that was situated on the border of a big forest, high up in the north. She had a pet bear. The bear was found in the forest. It was half dead of hunger, small and helpless. The lady brought the bear home. It was brought upon bottle by the lady and the old cook. After several years, it grew up to be a big bear. He was so strong that he could kill an animal easily. But he was the most amiable bear, who never dreamt of harming anybody, man or beast. He was docile and looked at the cattle with amicable eyes. The children used to play with him. The pets of the house also played tricks with him. He was friendly towards everyone in the manor house. Now, if you are asked to give a character sketch of the lady in the bear story, you can put these points. The lady in the story was a brave and courageous woman. She lived in an old manor house near the edge of the forest. She managed the entire state on her own. The lady was also very compassionate, as she brought home a dying bear cub and raised it. The lady loved discipline above everything else. She punished the bear when it tried to do some mischief. And another time she punished the bear when it tried to disobey her. She hit him on the nose with her parasol. The lady had great love for animals. She had some mountain ponies in her stable. She had 3 Lapland dogs as well. She looked after all of them. So that's it for today. Now let's have a quick look here. Whose side? Once during the American Civil War, a woman said to Abraham Lincoln, "Oh, Mr. President, I feel so sure God is on our side, don't you?" "Ma'am," said the President, "what should be of greater concern to us is whether we are on God's side." Beautifully said. Meaning, see, when we do something for a cost, when we struggle for a cause, we always think of seeking help from the God. And see, the idea expressed here by the President is that, you see, we should be concerned that, see, we should be on God's side, meaning we should be doing the right thing rather than seeking God's help in our own cause, which we may believe to be true or correct, but it's not necessary that it is always right or correct. See, so you see, it should be our concern that we always do the God's bidding, and we should try to follow the correct path, the right path, which is the path of God. And in that case, we will be on God's side. Thank you.